You again. Dragons. And all you need to know about them. It's quite a comprehensive text written by one of the greatest minds of the known world. Me. Yes, I wrote this one. After living with the dragons in the Sieg Mountains for decades now, I've come to learn a lot about their ways. The blood feud between the red and the white dragons, and how a band of freelancers got wrapped up in it. But that is for another tale. Yes, we are already water gems deep in hours. What a dreary moment we left off on. Poor Holifer. And now Valinrad's mind, a ferocious mess dead set only on vengeance. Will the party be able to survive after having charged so recklessly into danger? Well, let's find out. I give you part 4 of the tale of Detester's Lair. In summary, the party defeated the 4th Arclight, Ersti, freed Holifer only to lose him to the nightmares of the Aversion Room. And now, Valinrad, stricken by grief, charges impetuously towards the Alabaster Chapel, where another fellow cleric is soon to be executed. The skies overhead swirled in a terrible blood-orange maelstrom as the paladin dashed towards the Alabaster Chapel. The ritual of Plight had surely just begun.
This cult falls today.
Valinrad, slow down. Someone is going to see us,
spoke Ubi, careful not to raise his voice too high. The paladin was nearly at the door of the chapel now. Gothic chanting echoed from within. Retribution discovered a flight of stairs that led up the side of the church from the outside.
He's no use convincing. If he's going to draw their attention, we can at least flank them. These stairs must lead to some overlook.
The casters trotted quickly but quietly up the steps just as Valinrad had taken the last step to the main doors. He pushed them both open and began to stride in on the procession. A group of 4 grunts stood on a red carpet in the middle of the sermon hall, which led up to a stage where a man in yellow garb knelt before a dark elf intricately adorned in half-plate armor. He bore a frogmouth helmet and wielded 2 sword gauntlets attached at the wrists. Another dark elf wearing priest's robes and a mask like that of a jester stood behind him with arms raised high. The soldiers turned to face the paladin with weapons at the ready.
I thought you would come, young paladin, and you're just in time for the ritual. This cleric has already renounced the light. Would you like to do the same?
By this time, the other party members had taken the alternate stairs to a balcony, where they were able to overlook the procession. A staircase beside them led down to the stage, and another balcony with stairs mirrored where they stood on the opposite side of the chapel.
Keep your head down,
whispered Lucia to Ubi.
or you'll lose it.
Valinrad marched before the squadron of drow.
Your blasphemous teachings end today. Once I break you, as I did Ersti.
Then break me, if you can, as you have already your principles and your vows.
Pesvid turned to his dual-bladed comrade.
Menlid, cut him to pieces. We'll draw the others out soon enough.
Menlid flicked his sword gauntlets as if striking a giant match, and they both immolated in blue flames.
Attack!
Shouted Menlid, and his minions sprang upon the paladin. As they fought, the Pesvid began muttering a most virulent incantation.
It's time.
Uttered Retribution. But as soon as she and the other casters had begun their incantations, Pesvid had finished his. A giant black snowflake appeared out of thin air and hung at the top of the church, rotating and dropping black snow all over the sermon hall. As soon as the Pesvid casted a spell, did the chained cleric in gold make a run for it. Despite having his hands and feet still bound, he was able to make it all the way over to one of the dimly lit side halls. Screams and sounds of shearing flesh echoed from the shadows, and soon emerged a hulking bipedal crab-like beast with the eyes of a fly. Blood coated its many clacking claws.
Break off! Find the casters!
Shouted Menlid, and the grunts disengaged from Valinrad and began scattering in all directions. Just then, Ubi popped his head over the banister.
Here we are!
He exclaimed, and the other casters, who by now had finished their utterances, popped over the ledge and fired a plethora of eldritch blasts and witch bolts and firebolts down upon the grunts, picking them off like fish in a barrel. Ubi unleashed a grease spell that lathered the stairs in a slippery film as two grunts were ascending. They slipped and fell on the steps. Ubi then knocked over a brazier that was sitting on the balcony to set the stairs aflame. The two grunts caught fire and began running and dropping in a panic. Lucia fired a firebolt at a Pesvid, causing him to reel backwards. The Arclight then cast another spell which caused half a dozen black monoliths to appear throughout the room. He walked through one of them and appeared through another on the opposite balcony to the casters, and then crouched down to take cover. As magical blasts of energy shot through the sermon hall, Valinrad found himself succumbing to a weariness, despite the grunts having disengaged him, for the black snowflakes fell heavily upon him, and now covered the entire sermon hall in a thick black coat. Menlid continued walking ominously towards him, with bladed gauntlets still aflame.
Those who fall under the Plight flake never find the will to rise again. It will all be over soon enough, Paladin.
Menlid lashed upon him in a blazing display of fire and blade. Valinrad found himself with just barely enough strength to rise and deflect the first two strikes, but the next three cut and burned into his armor with an otherworldly fury. He found himself on his back, and now the crab-like beast was nearly upon him as well.
Allow me to end you. Mezzalals are much more messy in their executions,
he warned, as the giant crab claws snipped with a vile eagerness. Valinrad then made eye contact with Ubi on the balcony, his large eyes seemingly too big for his body, and they beamed with a childlike yearning, a yet unbroken hope.
It isn't over yet.
As Menlid came in with another thrust, Valinrad batted it away and retaliated with a strike of his own. Though a great heaviness still weighed upon him, he was able to just stand toe-to-toe with the Dark Elf captain as black snow continued to flurry.
Valinrad needs our help! Shoot the monster!
Shouted Ubi, pointing down at the bipedal crustacean. It suddenly started to burst with sparks as if he had shot from his finger to blast it apart. The casters, though, had been keen on his command, as they had unleashed an assault of magical energy to utterly obliterate it into pieces.
I'm almost out of spells!
Me too.
Shouted Retribution. Just then, the wisping shape of a shadowy black maw came sailing from the other balcony over to Retribution, knocking her back against the wall of the chapel. And then, the last surviving soldier of the magical onslaught, appeared from out of one of the shadowy monoliths beside Retribution and stabbed her viciously with a forked short sword. The warlock fell to the ground limp. Pesvid was still standing after having cast his spell, and so Lucia took the opportunity to unleash a blistering ice bolt into him which landed dead center. Pesvid let out a shriek and then walked back through the monolith from where he had come. He appeared on the stage and then hobbled to the back of the chapel, where stood an expansive orange stained glass window with tooth-like segments. It then appeared to split into half a dozen mirror images of himself, a phase straight through each segment of the stained glass wall. Ubitu, being out of spells, picked up one of the short swords of the falling grunts on the staircase and dashed over to slay Retribution's offender. Raya used her last spell to heal Retribution. She took in a long, deep breath. Soon, the Plight flake overhead evaporated, and Valinrad found a new holy wind rise up inside himself. He charged into Menlid with a divine fury, putting him on the back foot.
For my dear friends, and the light of Midhelber!
His mace lit up with a blinding heavenly light as he brought it down upon the drow captain. A blow caved in his breastplate and sent him crashing onto his back, where he lay motionless in the black powder. The hall was filled with silence as the party slowly regrouped from the chaos. They soon approached the mosaic on the back wall. It glowed with burning beauty.
It seems as though the vicar phased through each of these panels at once.
But which one did he really go through?
We'll push on each until we reach him. You'll end your life quickly if you do it that way.
Coughed a voice from behind them. The party turned around and approached the gauntlet-sworded dark elf who lay dying. With some hesitation, Valinrad approached the fallen warrior and removed his helmet to behold the arc-light Menlid. The face of death was near approaching, but he also held something within that Valinrad now could see, something he had kept hidden for ages.
Press on the wrong space, and flames will burst forth to incinerate you. Scout the sides of the Alabaster Chapel, and you will find the stained glass panel in the same shape as one of the panels on the back wall. That will be the one you press to reach Pesvid's ward. You would spare the life of the one who had failed you, and forsake your ally? Why? Behind the shell of steel I hide. I have been tormented by this evil all around me. I sought the Lech as a means to wield power over my enemies, but lo, my foe are not those who seek spirit and goodness, as I once did. My foe is only one who makes me hate. Ever since I entered that depth chamber, the last trial to earn my ranking amongst the Lech, when I emerged, I knew I had gone too deep.
What happened to you in the depth chamber?
Menlid only closed his eyes and grimaced.
You doused so many bright lights, slew so many good men. You could have left at any time. Why didn't you? I didn't feel I could. With the Pesvid's ritual of Plight hanging over me during every execution, I knew the black snow wasn't just to rid the prisoners of their own light, but for all of us beneath its cold crypts to remain there. I wasn't strong. I wasn't strong enough to leave. But now I will go, where the red eye cannot see me, where my family may already be, for I long to see their faces again.
Menlid suddenly gripped Valinrad's arm.
Bless me, Paladin, before I die. Bless me so that I can leave this lair. Show me the light again. I miss its warmth.
Valinrad hovered a shaking hand over Menlid and muttered a holy incantation. It was one he'd spoken 100 times, but this time he found it hard to find the words.
Blessed be Menlad.
Came the last utterances of his prayer, and then Menlad took his final breath. Valinrad placed his hands atop the brow of the dark elf and closed his eyes.
I have fallen, just like he.
Ubi took in a deep breath and approached the holy warriors. The little gnome spoke with a small, still voice.
But we didn't let it consume us, and we won't let it take us ever again.
He stared into Valinrad's eyes as if pining for something.
Will we?
Valinrad hung his head to the gnome like an ashamed son before his father. The rest of the party circled around and knelt beside them.
No, we won't. Our fellowship is great. One candle alone may be blown out, but many flames together burn with light that darkness cannot reach.